So the BBC was in a big restructuration about some years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. Tell us about the restructuration and how changed the professions inside the BBC, how journalists had to change their work.
Well, the biggest problem has been that it's been an ongoing restructuring. For the last 10 to 12 years, every year we've been losing jobs. And therefore, the BBC has been very poor at accepting that if you have fewer people, you should be doing fewer things. So effectively, what they've tried to do is to get fewer and fewer people doing the work previously done by a lot more people. And if you were to talk to people on the shop floor, I think quite a lot of them would suggest that they sometimes feel like the hamster on the wheel, going quicker and quicker, wondering when things are going to change. Luckily, the union is very strong in the BBC, and we have done two things. One, there's been several thousand people leave, and almost all of them have gone as a result of them making a choice to leave. We've stopped the managers deciding which of their enemies they're going to get rid of. So that's number one. Number two, we've been quite good, but not as good as we should have been, in forcing the BBC to take work away at the same rate at which they take people away. And therefore, obviously, journalists are doing more in their shifts when they're at work, and there is also a push to get people to be as multi-skilled as possible. Now, as a union, we don't necessarily object to that. We want our members to have a rewarding day at work, but each bit of the work has got to be given enough time to do it properly, and often multi-skilling again means doing more but not necessarily doing it as well.
Very good. So tell us a little bit how the newsroom is organized in terms of status and who does what? Producers, correspondents?
Well, you saw the main newsroom on your visit this morning. It's a massive room with probably, during the day, 200, 300 people, maybe more, working in different parts. Now, they're working for radio, television, online, they're working for domestic and international, and clearly you have to have a mechanism for that work to be divided. Now, putting it very simply, we have on-air people and not on-air people. We have radio, we have television. And so we have, working for the whole of the BBC, correspondents, whose job it is, both in England and overseas, to provide raw, unedited often, material for the BBC. And then inside London, again in radio and television and online, you have lots and lots of people, many of whom, like say me, I was a correspondent for 20 years before I came back to London, who are effectively the people who take that raw material, convert it into a form that it can be broadcast, and then ensure it gets on air. So that's really the division. And because we're quite an old, rather bureaucratic organisation, we have quite a lot of titles, we have quite a lot of numbers for grades, but essentially we have on air, not on air, and that's the main distinction.
És que si no ens saltem els eixos no podrem fer servir les dues.
Vale.
Seguiu.
So how does people have taken this multi-skill new kind of organization in the newsroom?
Well, there's probably a generational thing as well. I think when you're 20, you're far more prepared to try lots of new things than when you're 50, 55. So there is a generational aspect. But I think as a generalization, most people are not unhappy with multi-skilling, not unhappy getting extra skills, but they want two things. They want time to do the work properly, and as a union man, I want them to get extra money for all the extra skills that they take, because the BBC is gaining an advantage, and in my opinion, they should pay for it.
And is this happening?
Often it is, yes. We do have special agreements for minimum salaries, we have special agreements for new technology, but again, because it's happening at the same time as a period of significant job cuts, it's not always possible to put the pressure on the employer that we might like to do.
Are you viewing new job cuts in the following months or years?
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, job cuts have become a fairly permanent feature of the BBC. But as I say, we know where the job cuts have to be. Like they say, we want to cut 200 and the first thing the union does is we ask for what we call a voluntary trawl. We make them send an email to all employees asking who wants to leave. And it's happened now over 10 years, but so far we've always had enough people choosing to go to make the cuts they need, and because of that it stops a situation where managers have got 6 people and can then say, I only need 4, you 2 are going.
How are industrial relations now in the BBC?
They've been very bad indeed, but we've now got a new big boss, and we're getting rid of the head of HR, who again, I'll put it delicately, the NUJ did not have the best of relationships with. She's going at Easter, and so we're hoping that a new big boss and a new head of HR may lead to better relations between the union and the BBC.
Have you met on strike recently?
We've had strikes, yes. We are.
When was the last one?
We had one earlier in the year. Well, we had 2 earlier in the year. We had one, the NUJ, only on its own, and then we had a bigger strike with our technical colleagues who joined us in a second strike. That was over attempts by the BBC to change really important conditions unilaterally, and that is something we will not tolerate.
So how many of the strikes are made only by the UNG?
The NUJ, recently, unfortunately, more and more, because our sister union has tended not to be, in our opinion, as strong as it ought to have been. But the thing is, the reality of the modern world, and we're back to the multi-skilling question you asked me earlier, if journalists stop working, everything stops working, whereas in the olden days, that wasn't always the case.
With minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
So.